This is Rob from the Teepee building team in association with Cattle Chiefs, and we're putting a teepee up inside a barn. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to unload the 4 poles, put them into position, set some step ladders up where we're going to raise the teepee up from, and then put them on top of it and put the crown piece, which we attach the poles to, on it. So what we do is we put the pole into position and it fits into its slot, and then we put a pin in there, a locating pin, which holds it in place. And we do the same for all 4 poles, creating what we call a quad pod. Now then, we add the purlin into position now, which helps to keep the structure in the same shape. I'll stop the poles from splitting apart as we lift them. It's especially important as we're working on a wet, slippery surface, as the concrete floor to the barn had only just been washed prior to our arrival. So each purlin is clipped into place using a pin, which we just latch into place. Now we did this for both sets of purlins, 2 purlins on both sets of poles, creating what we call the quad pod. At the back of the quad pod, we've put a bar and a fireplace to push up against, to stop the teepee from sliding out across the floor and out of the barn. Now with 2 men on the front there, and 1 man on the ladders, on the ladder man's count, they push upwards, pushing the back poles against the fixed structure of the fire pit in the bar, forcing it upwards. Now as the ground was wet and slippery, we took it steady and careful, not wanting anyone to fall over. We also had the added thing of the structure itself. The teepee was going to go up 7.2 metres final height, while the ceiling roof of the barn was 7.5. Now we pushed the poles into position, carefully not wanting to hit the roof, and feeling like it could do just going up a little bit more, we push it upwards. Now, as a quad pod, it's not the most stable of structures, so what we did, we tied some ropes to each of the 4 poles to stop them from sliding out backwards, and tied them in tight. We also had to set some ladders up now to go up to the top, and we carried the canvas around and put the canvas at the front there against that front pole to stop that front pole sliding out towards the camera. With the fire pit holding the back 2 and the canvas holding the front 2 to hold the structure together. We then put the ladders up. To stop the ladders from sliding out, we put some pallets at the back there to wedge it into place, and we also strapped the bottom of the ladders to the 2 poles at the back there, and we also strapped the top of the ladders to the crown piece to stop it also from sliding out. Once the ladders are secure, we brought the poles in. Now normally we'd slide the poles upwards, but because of the shape and because of the barn and the surface, we carried the poles up, the first 2 up, then latched them into place using the pins. The final 3, a teepee consists of 9 poles, so the final 3 poles we slid up as we would do it normally outside. And this works by sliding up the poles on the far poles the furthest away from the ladders. Now once the pole's in position, 1 man will stay on the bottom and 1 man will push the poles up. It's January, it's been a wet winter, the poles are very heavy, they swelled up and taken up a lot of water over this winter, so it takes a little bit of pushing. There's also the added factor that we don't want to put a pole through the side of the roof, so the poles are taken up gently and gradually to make sure we didn't hit the roof. Then once it gets towards the top, the man on the ladders who's strapped to the crown with his safety harness will then carry the pole into position and hold it up, and he'll put it into the locating pins while the 2 men on the floor position it in the right place. This stage is repeated again for the final 2 poles, which we slide up and pin into place with the locating pins. We slide this one up as well. Then once into place, we now add the rest of the purlins. Now the purlins themselves, they spread out the poles, making sure they're the right distance apart. And what it involves doing, it involves one man on a set of ladders who hooks it into the who pins it to the pins it to the poles, and then a man on the bottom just pushing the poles into the right place. Now to put the purlins in, we do from one side to the other, working our way around the circle, back to the other side, then back again. So the back end of the poles push into place. Now in order to move the final two poles, we have to unstrap it. As you can see, it's dropped down a little bit as the poles were moved. So we put the penultimate one in. So we've just got one more left to put in place. And as you can see, the gap is too large. So what we have to do now, we have to either lift the teepee, so to close the gap up. Now to do this, what we do is we'll push on these poles here and push the teepee upwards until the purlin fits. And we put the canvas at the back there and we move the fire pit to the back there to push against them. So the weight of them will stop the teepee from moving across the floor, while we push the teepee upwards. So each man has got a strap and a pin, so they can hold onto the pole and move the pole. And they put the pins in in the holes, bottom of the pole, where the lifter beams will go later on. Put the strap around. Then when everyone is in position, on the count of 3, we push in and lift upwards, closing the gap as the poles all move in. It slides across the floor. Now the poles are pushed up until we feel like the gap's going to be enough to fit that purlin. Now the only way to test this is to get the purlin up there and to try it out. If we've got it right, it'll fit right in. If not, we might have to lift the teepee some higher, or we have to take the teepee down by pulling the poles out at the bottom, lowering the gap down. Fortunately this time it was spot on. Now then, we've put some lights up and wrapped them around the poles. Each pole has fairy lights wrapped around it, and they're connected to where the power gets to a central power ring at the top there that's attached to the crown at the top of the teepee. We've also put on a shackle, a rope and a pulley system, which is so we can higher up the cartwheel later on. Now we're putting on the next job is put the canvas over the top. So we take a purlin out, we put a rope up there with a wheel over the top that we throw across the top. In the foreground the tarpaulin is spread out. This is to protect the canvas from getting dirty from whatever's on the ground. As you can see, it's wet where he's washing it out still. So we unfurl the tarpaulin, and then the tarpaulin, unfurl the canvas. The canvas is then attached to a beam, which is attached to the rope that goes over the wheel at the top. One man will pull the rope over the top, 2 men will guide the canvas around, and then the final man will pick the canvas up and haul up the rest of the weight, pulling it upwards and over the top of the teepee. Now while the canvas is loose, it's easy to go up and down on the ladders. So at this point here we put the smoke hood on, which conceals the top of the teepee, and normally we put some dummy poles on to give it its distinct shape. However, in this barn the ceiling was too close to the top of the teepee for us to put the poles in, so they wouldn't fit. So we haven't put them on for this build. Next is to waft the canvas into position so that it's all lined up in the right place. This means putting the gossets, corner bits of the canvas on each panel against the poles. We're now going to lift the front of the teepee up. The formation we're putting the teepee in is called what we call a witch's hat, with all the sides lifted. As you'll see later on, it looks like a witch's hat. We put one lifter in first, and the lifter itself is connected to the 2 poles. We lift it in, and it's into place. It's pegged into place. Now then, we're going to add some cross beam supports to this just to strengthen the structure up a little bit on these front two. Now while the two men put those in, the rest of us are going to fold up the canvas, the tarpaulin, and put that away. It's no longer needed as we've got no other canvases to attach in this formation. Now the cross beams here are being strapped up to the lifter beams. Using ratchet straps. We'll go and have a closer look now, and I'll show you how it's been done. Now the reason for this is if it's not careful, when all the sides are lifted up, it can mean the canvas rotates around on the structure, pulling all the lifter beams either to the left or the right, which can damage the poles or it can damage the pins. This cross beam stops any movement in the lifters as it goes up. Now they're crossed across like that to reach from lifter to the left, lifter to the right, and strapped up, preventing any movement. Now that the front two in, we're going to move around and start getting the rest of the lifters in. This is done by one man on the front, down by the canvas, who puts a D-ring on the canvas over the lifter, front of the lifter beam, and one man on the ladders who pins the top of the beam to the pole, the main pole, and then we also put another beam on the pole further down. We work our way around the teepee, and the gossets are all untied, giving as much slack into the canvas as possible. Now this is very tight, it can be, putting this lifting up like this, lifting all this canvas. So we've gone round back to the other side here, and we're going to lift this section up first, and we're going to work our way around against the least resistance. The ladders are lowered, they're no longer needed up there. And we're going to work our way around. Until all 9 sides are lifted like this. As you can see, it does look like a witch's hat. Now it fills nearly the whole barn from left to right. Now we'll walk up the barn and we'll look inside, and it looks quite spectacular, especially now it's gone dark outside. We've got some fairy lights going up all the poles. And at the top there we've got the shackle with the rope and the pulley for our flower wheel chandelier, which we're going to put in a bit. Give a quick look around, show you some of the site. And down the concrete floor here, we're going to cover the concrete up with carpet. And we're going to look back around and back out into the hallway. The next stage in the build is to put the carpet in, and then we're also going to put some furniture in, and we're going to hang a mirror ball up as well. So the first thing we do is take the flower wheels, the 2 parts, and the wagon wheel chandelier out of the van. And now we're going to get the carpet out. Now we have nothing to nail the carpet to, it's out on grass, we can nail the carpet down, but as it's in barn and working on the concrete, there's nothing to nail to. Thankfully, we have velcros on our carpets, which means we can attach the carpets all together into one big section, which will hold them in place. Now in the foreground there, we've got the wagon wheel being bolted together, which is for the flower hoop, which is 3 meters in diameter. We're going to decorate that with some laurel and some artificial flowers, which we'll show you a bit later on, the finished product. Now the carpets themselves are all upside down at the moment, so we get to the velcro strips. The velcro strip is put onto each carpet and then attached to the carpet next to it. Now in the fork, we're going to rotate the carpets around, get them into position. On the bit of metal swinging in the foreground is where we're going to put our mirror ball. Now to get the carpet underneath the poles, we have to lift the poles up. We tuck the carpet in place, which will also help hold it in position. Then putting a motor on the mirror ball to help it rotate. We're just clipping that into position now and putting the power feed in for that. Now we're pulling out the rest of the creases in the carpet. And just tweaking it to make it look the best finish we can. While the power feed is being strapped to the mirror ball with cable ties, and just cut the end of the cable ties off just to make it a bit tidy. Now the flower wheel's been put into position. Now in order, at the front of the carpet there's a trip hazard, so we're going to put some rubber mats down just to conceal that corner, so anybody tripping over it. Now once the rubber mats are in position, we're going to go attach the flower wheel chandelier to the pulley system that we put up earlier on shackles and chains. Then we're going to decorate, the top wheel is decorated with ivy, and then it's got Edison bulbs hanging down. The next one is a flower hoop, which is going to be decorated, as I said earlier, with artificial flowers. So this is a teepee that with the mirror ball set up in the dark. You can see the glimmer coming off the mirror ball. And here is a wagon wheel chandelier and flower chandelier finished, with the ivy hanging down off the wagon wheels. We've also put some artificial flowers around the purlins. Around the outside of the canvas we put some festoon lights, which you can just see the bulbs dangling down around the outside in this image. And this is the Chesterfield sofas and fire pit that we put inside to give for a VIP area. Now this is a video from the morning of the wedding fair, as all the exhibitors are just getting ready. So we'll just take a quick walk through the barn and you can get an appreciation of what we've set up really in place. So at the front here we have some luxury toilets based on an old shepherd's hut design. We have a wedding car. Its final clean down. I'm going to go up to the gin bar, which looks very welcoming. Pizza wagon, and into the barn. Now the barn itself has been decorated out with marquee linings, and then it's got round tables and some flower decorations. Because the barn itself is a wedding venue, this is the kind of look what you'd be looking at. And you go through. We go through into the next section where it's been cordoned up, been split in half. It's also been lined, and we've got loads of exhibitors also in the process of setting up their stalls for the day. As we come through, a quick look back in, and then we go through this doorway here to where the teepee is set up in the second barn. Now we've got a catwalk at the front here. They're going to model some bridesmaids dresses. They're also going to model some groom suits. And there's a chair set up to watch it for the audience. And then we walk around here to where the VIP area is set up under the sign underneath the giant hat. See the festoon lights around the outside. Put some straw bales in position and a rope around the outside there. And there's the bar, ready for it to go. And we've got all the comfy sofas and furniture in position for the guests to sit on. But there's the flower wheel all set up in position, and here's the bar, and that was the final of our build.